Throughout history, tyrannical regimes have faced revolutions. Some have succeeded, others have failed. Today, with the unprecedented level of global wealth inequality and the power of corporate and government elites to make decisions that negatively impact the mass of people on the planet, the imperative for revolt is greater than ever. But when will it come? What will it look like? What lessons can we learn from the past? Taking on these grand questions is a frequent guest on Uprising, the acclaimed veteran journalist and best-selling author Chris Hedges. Hedges has reported from more than 50 countries. He was a correspondent at the New York Times, where as part of a group of reporters, he won a Pulitzer Prize for his coverage of terrorism. He's currently a columnist for Truthdig and will be speaking this Sunday at an event for Truthdig in Southern California, which we'll tell you more about. Hedges is also a senior fellow at the Nation Institute, and he's written a number of best-selling books, including Empire of Illusion, Death of the Liberal Class, War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, and Days of Destruction, Days of Revolt, which he co-wrote with Joe Sacco. His brand new book, just out from Nation Books, is called Wages of Rebellion, The Moral Imperative of Revolt, and he now joins me on video stream. Welcome to Uprising, Chris.
Thank you, Sonali.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Truthdig event this Sunday. It's happening at the Aratani Theatre at 5 p.m. and I will be moderating that event, and we'll be hearing much more from you about your book. But I want to begin by asking you to set the stage for one issue that you bring up throughout your book, where you say that revolutions are often unpredictable, that it takes years for the idea that the current system is bankrupt to spread. And often elites actually have no idea that people's minds are changing. Can you expand on that a bit more? Can you give us an example?
Well, this draws from some of the great theorists on revolution, Crane Brinton, Davies, Alexander Berkman, and others, who talk about that process when the potency of the ruling ideology, and as Karl Marx understood, ideologies serve economic power, in this case, of course, neoliberalism, the free market, globalization. When those ideologies lose their efficacy, when people understand that the promises, trickle-down economics, etc., are a lie, then they enter into this period that Antonio Gramsci calls an interregnum, where you have yet to formulate an alternative vision, but the ideology, the ruling ideology, has essentially been exposed as a tool to further the interests of a very narrow power elite. And I think that's where we are. We see indications of it across the cultural and political spectrum. Congress's approval rating at 7%. Deep frustration, again, across the political spectrum over warrantless wiretapping, eavesdropping, monitoring, over the bailing out of Wall Street, frustration over these endless imperial wars that, of course, a small group of arms manufacturers, obscenely wealthy, frustration over the stripping away of our most basic and cherished civil liberties, including habeas corpus, due process with the passage of Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act. But in calcified, dying regimes, it doesn't matter what the citizenry wants. I mean, a small example of that is what's happening today in Denton, Texas, where the community overwhelmingly has voted to ban fracking, and the Texas Senate essentially passes a bill saying it's against the law for any community to control their own destiny. So all of these are messages. Black Lives Matter marching through the streets of Baltimore, Ferguson, New York, and other cities, and yet, and courtesy of the Washington Post, an investigative piece in the Post, we're watching mostly poor people of color, 2 a day, being murdered by militarized police forces. This phenomena of actually having video of police killing an unarmed civilian and then walking free with no repercussions. So the inability of the state to respond, the predatory nature of the state, which really functions more and more nakedly to discredit these ideas, creates this period of uncertainty. And I think that that's where we are. And when something erupts, it's often been fermenting below the surface for a long time, as Berkman writes out in his essay Invisible Revolution.